Right, here we are again. Back again after 2 weeks off, and we'll be carrying on now with the final chapter of Bhagavadgītā, chapter 18, of course. And when we were here 3 weeks ago, we're noticing the way really which the Gita is now beginning to wind down its teachings by recapitulating the main points. I mean, up until about verse 45, yeah, up until about verse 45, the discussion had been going on about the nature of action, and Krishna had again been applying his analysis of the threefold analysis based on the gunas to things like the knowledge that motivates action, the action itself, the doer of action, understanding, resolution to perform action, and happiness, etc. But now he's moving on, and he's really, in these verses, we can recognize what the Gita itself sees as its three main subject areas. Now, last time it was started off hearing about karma yoga. Then shortly we'll hear about jnana, and then bhakti. And these are the three principal topics that the Gita talks about, and therefore in this final phase of the teachings there is a recapitulation and a re-emphasis on all three of those. Now, what's significant is, and we saw this last time, is the way that karma yoga, desireless action, is seen as leading into bhakti, devotion. Krishna said, not only should actions be free of selfish desire, greed, attachment, etc., but they should be performed as an act of worship. Swakarmana tamabhyarcha, he said, worshipping the Lord, from whom all beings come into existence, by whom this world is pervaded. Worship him swakarmana, by your actions. So there we can see what's happening is that karma yoga is being carried forward into bhakti, and we'll see the same thing hopefully today, if we get that far, which I think we will, how karma yoga is also regarded as the platform from which higher spiritual knowledge of Brahman can be achieved. So that's what's happening here in these verses. Now, as I say, last time we finished on verse 46, yataha prapritir bhutanam yena sarvamidam tatam swakarmana tamabhyarcha siddhim vindati manavaha. A person achieves success, perfection. Oh, I should ask if anybody can hear me or can't hear me. Could you put a message up? We never be 100% certain. Oh, someone had Vasudev, thank you. Well, it just says Om. That could be silence, or it could be speech, couldn't it? Yes, if someone could say, I can definitely hear you. Yes, so karma yoga, bhakti, it becomes a way of expressing bhakti. And I think it's interesting that in the earliest texts where bhakti is discussed, this idea of performing action, living your life as an act of devotion, is really the most prominent expression of bhakti that we encounter, more so than perhaps offerings in the temple or bhajans or chanting mantras and prayers. It's dedicating one's actions, the way one lives, making them into an act of devotion. This is one of the more prominent ways in which bhakti is advocated. But let's move on now. Text 47 of chapter 18. Again, we're very much talking about karma yoga, the first of Krishna's really big themes. And it's evident here that Krishna is recapitulating, because in verse 47 he repeats a line that was already presented back in chapter 3 at the heart of the initial teachings on karma yoga. I think it's verse 35. This is the same line here in verse 47 of chapter 18 as in chapter 3 verse 35, where he says, Shreyan swadharma vigunaha paradharmat svanushtitat. And what Shreya means is it's better better swadharma viguna, shreyan swadharma viguna, that even if your own action, the action that you're designated to perform, that it is your duty to perform, is viguna, appears faulty, appears in some way flawed, it's better than paradharma, the dharma of another, the duty of another, su anushtita, which means well situated, well performed. In other words, what Krishna is saying here is each one of us has a particular position in society, a particular family position, a particular position in our community, and we have duties and responsibilities. And even when these are problematic, we should stick to them and not jump around and really give up that duty. I think Krishna here is moving back to directly address Arjuna and his particular dilemma that we heard about in chapter 1. Even though it's problematic, viguna, as Arjuna's swadharma is now, he should still stick to it. Still better than abandoning it and taking up a paradharma, a dharma for which he is not suited. Arjuna becoming a Brahmin or a businessman or an actor or a craftsman, it wouldn't, just even if he was good at it, it's not proper, because loka sangraham evapi. The reason why Arjuna is has to do his Kshatriya duty is that the well-being, the prosperity of society as a whole depends on individuals accepting and living up to their responsibilities, even when those are problematic or viguna. So therefore Krishna says, Shreyan swadharma vigunaha paradharmat svanushtitat. Why is that? Svabhava niyatam karma kurvan, performing swabhava niyatam karma, the type of action that is niyatam, that is directed by one's own nature. In other words, each one of us has particular propensities, particular abilities, particular tendencies, and we should act in accordance with those, performing our duties as we are most fitted for the well-being, the welfare of the whole of society. So swabhava jam, swabhava means our own individual nature. Is that right? Swadharma vigunaha paradharmat svanushtita swabhava niyatam, the duties, the karma, the action that is shaped by, made appropriate by our particular nature. Kurvan, performing that, na apnoti kilbisham. One will never achieve contamination by that. It's the proper thing to do. I think that's what, and Krishna is directly addressing Arjuna, because we'll remember, perhaps some of us who have been with us the whole way through, will remember back in chapter 1, Arjuna was talking about doing his duty, being papa, wickedness, because he's having to fight with relatives, elders of the family. Surely this can't be right. But Krishna is saying here, addressing that exact point that Arjuna raised right at the beginning, performing the duty that your swabhava, that your innermost nature makes appropriate for you. Na apnoti kilbisham. You'll never be contaminated by that. You'll never be degraded by that, because you are doing your duty. You are fulfilling your responsibility to family, to society, and to dharma as a whole. Therefore, again, we can see karma yoga. Okay. Napnoti kilbisham. I think next is verse 48. It's sahajam karma kavanteya sadoshamapi nachajait. Sahajam karma. Yeah, sahajam means born along with you, or that which appears at the time of your birth. It's like if someone says, sometimes you hear people say, oh, I was born to be a teacher, or I was born to be a musician, or something like that. The idea is that you're swabhava, you're born with a particular nature, particular propensities, and that is your sahajam karma, Kawan. The sahajam karma, that is the activity that your nature, that you're born with, the swabhav you're born with, makes appropriate for you. Sadosha mapi, even if there is dosha. Dosha, yes. Whenever you see that word in Sanskrit, for some reason, I think of eating in a South Indian restaurant. You can get those lovely. Anyway, that's not what Krishna means here. He's not talking about South Indian. Dosha means faults. So dosha mapi means even if there is some fault in it, nachajait. You must not give it up. It's imperative. Judge, giving up. Nachajait. You must not give it up. You must not give up your sahajam karma, Conte, the duties you are that are come naturally to you, that your abilities, your propensities mean that you are most qualified to perform. And again, it's this idea of looking beyond your own self-interest, your own wishes, wants, tendencies and sentiments and emotions, and thinking of the bigger picture, the well-being of society, the loka sangraham that Krishna mentioned in chapter 3, verse 20, the wider implications of performance of your duty. So even if there is some dosha, some problem with it, some difficulty, as is again exactly the case for Arjuna, it's great being a kshatriya when you're doing the nice kshatriya things, adosha, without any dosha. When you're giving charity, when you're looking after the poorest people, when you're seeking out the welfare of those in need. Yeah, that's kshatriya dharma as well. That's the dharma of the political leaders. And that's pleasant. But when it comes, as Arjuna finds out, to facing wrongdoers in battle, thieves, usurpers, etc., like the Kauravas are, like Duryodhana, Dusasana, etc., and especially when those people are your own family, then your sahajam karma, the action you were born to perform, becomes sadosha. It becomes faulty, problematic. But even sadosham api nachajait, Krishna says, even if those doshas are there, you must not give it up. Sadosham api nachajait. Sarvaramba hidoshena. Dumenagnirivavritaha. Sarva aramba, all endeavors, all activities, all things that we undertake, all undertakings, sarva aramba, he are certainly doshena avritaha, are covered in some fault. Dumenagniriva, just as fire is covered by smoke. Every fire has smoke with it. So every action that you perform in this world will have some fault. What the Gita is meaning here is that whilst we're in this world, we're in a form of existence that is inherently impure. You don't maintain any state of purity because you're in an impure world. Dharma sukshmosti. Dharma is subtle. It's very difficult to work out how to live with purity in this world. We see that Yudhishthira tries to live a life of pure virtue in the Mahabharata, and gets into difficulties at times because sometimes he has to do things which are at least superficially impure. So if we're going to do our duty in this world, sometimes if you're a kshatriya, you've got to do unpleasant tasks. You have to administer justice. You have to try and suppress thieves and robbers, etc. If you're a business person, a vaishya, sometimes you've got to make business decisions which will favor one person over another, etc. So sarvaramba hidoshena, dumen agnirivavritaha, that all the endeavors, all the activities that one may perform in this world as you go through life, there will always be some dosha attached to them. It's just the nature of this world. You cannot live in the world in a state of absolute purity. I think the life of Yudhishthira illustrates that very well. You know, the gambling match, he got himself into a frightful situation there, just simply because he was trying to do the kshatriya thing, and the kshatriya thing was filled with doshas, gambling, etc. So that's what Krishna says. Sahajam karma kavanteya sadoshamapi nachajate. Even though the duty that you were born to perform is riddled with dosha, even though at times it is beset by faults, by difficulties, nachajate, you must not give it up. Because if you're going to take that attitude like Arjuna is taking, then you're not going to live in the world. You'll just have to absent yourself from the world. And Krishna has already insisted that that type of renunciation is not what he sees as best. Because the world matters, the stability, the well-being of the world matters. And if people just think, oh, there's so many faults in this world, I'm going to abandon my position, then the welfare of the world will suffer. So, sarvarambahidoshena dhumenagnirivavritaha. All the endeavors in this world will be tainted inevitably at some point by dosha, by faults, by problem, and you must not give it up. And now verse 49. This is the real point, though, that Krishna has. So I'm going to sit back in my chair a bit and relax. This is the real point. Okay, yes, perform your duty. Absolutely. Do it properly. But in verse 49, he brings us to the point again of karma yoga. He is not recommending karma per se. He is not recommending the normal form of self-motivated action. He is recommending action as karma yoga. And therefore he says in verse 49, he gives the proper state of mind, proper state of consciousness through which this sahajam karma should be performed. Because you're like Duryodhana is performing his sahajam karma. He is a kshatriya, he was born to fight, he is fighting, but that's not what Krishna is talking about. We mustn't make that mistake. Because verse 49 qualifies all that has been said before and shows that what's being spoken about is not like Duryodhana performing Kshatriya dharma, if you like, simply so he can become rich, powerful, etc. Selfish, greedy motivation. Because Krishna says, asakta buddhihi sarvatra. With your buddhi, your intelligence, your thinking, your focus, asakta, without attachment, free of that desirous attachment that Duryodhana has, sarvatra, in all ways, everywhere. And that, again, I make this point, if Arjuna, and we hope he will, accepts the ideal of karma yoga and fights the battle, as he will fight the battle, in the next chapters of the Bhishma Parvan of the Mahabharata, Arjuna fights, persuaded by Krishna. And Duryodhana will fight. They're doing the same things, shooting the bow, wielding the sword, etc. But it's completely different, because Arjuna, we hope, is motivated now by the ideal of karma yoga. Therefore he is asakta buddhihi. His mind is not attached to the winning of the kingdom anymore. He fights because it is his duty to do so, not because he has a longing, a hankering, an intense desire for the sweet taste of sovereignty. So although Duryodhana and Arjuna physically are doing the same action, it's completely different, because Arjuna is fighting without selfish motive. Duryodhana is fighting completely obsessed by selfish motivation. You only have to read his speeches in the Mahabharata to see that he is a disturbed individual who is utterly obsessed with his self and his position and his reputation and the power and sovereignty he absolutely longs for. So the action physically is the same, but mentally and emotionally is absolutely different. Asakta buddhihi sarvatra. Duryodhana is sakta buddhi. His mind is attached obsessively to what he can gain. Arjuna must be the opposite. Asakta buddhihi sarvatra. Then again, how does he do this? Jitatma, vigataspriha. Jitatma. Jita means conquering. Actually, it's the same verb as jayate, jaya, to conquer. But here it's jita atman, conquering himself. I don't think here atman can mean the spiritual atman, the true self. It must mean, jitatma must mean self-control, self-mastery, not allowing his emotions, his passions to run away with him, performing his duty, asakta, without hankering, without desire, jitatma, dispassionately, in complete control of his emotions, doing it on the rational basis that this is my duty. Atman could also mean his mind, with his mind under control, but self-control, mind control of your mind, it's very similar. Vigata spriha. Spriha is from the verb sprih. It means to touch. Vigata means gone away. Here spriha means attachment, wanting to touch the objects of enjoyment, wanting to seek the materialistic rewards of his action. None of that. Vigata spriha. You can see here, this verse encapsulates really the karma yoga, as Krishna says. Sakta buddhihi sarvatra, jitatma, vigata spriha. Okay, that's the ideal consciousness. Three things that he's given. Asakta buddhi, your mind, your thoughts are free of all hankering and attachment. Jitatma, you're completely in control of your emotions, your passions, etc. You're doing it because it's the right thing to do. Vigataspriha, and you're free of attachment for any reward or gain that you might get on a selfish level. Vigataspriha. And then what is the result of that? Naishkarmya siddhim paramam. Naishkarmya siddhim paramam. Let me think if I can remember that verse again. Asakta buddhihi sarvatra jitatma vigataspriha naishkarmya siddhim parama sanyasein adhigacchati. So adhigacchati, the final word is the verb. He achieves, literally he goes to, he gains. What does he achieve? By performing action with this renounced state of mind, naishkarmya siddhim paramam. Naishkarmya siddhi. Siddhi means again the perfection, the success, but here it's qualified, but it's a particular type of success, and it is naishkarmya siddhi. Naishkarmya means free from karma. You can see that in the word. Karma being the cycle of action, reaction, and rebirth that goes along with it. So what Krishna is saying here, if you can perform your sahajam karma, the duty that you were born to perform, but in that way without attachment, in complete self-control, then the result of that is naishkarmya siddhim paramam, the supreme state of success that liberates one from karma. Now we're getting onto it. This is moksha dharma, because this karma yoga that Krishna has been describing here, the goal of it, apnoti, one gains, oh no, adhigacchati, wasn't it? One reaches naishkarmya siddhim paramam. Paramam means supreme. The supreme naishkarmya siddhi, the supreme perfection of being transcendent to one's karma. That's the whole idea of moksha, liberation. We have good karma, we have bad karma, we enjoy, we suffer constantly, fluctuating up and down. But naishkarmya means we transcend that, and that's what moksha is, transcending the world, the domain of karma. and attaining Naishkarmya Siddhim Paramam, that supreme state of being perfectly Naishkarmya, in a state beyond the clutches of good and bad karma. And it's interesting, there's one other word I haven't mentioned there, Sanyasena. That means by means of sannyas. Now that word sannyas is probably very familiar to many. Sannyasis, they are people we could recognize in their saffron robes, often carrying the danda in their hand, shaven heads, renunciates. And so Krishna says, by means of sannyas, you obtain this state of Naishkarmya Siddhi. But when he talks about sannyas here, he's not talking about the wandering ascetic with the shaven head and the saffron robes and the danda. He's talking about the person who remains active in the world, performing his sahajam karma, his duty, without any selfish desire. That, from the Gita's perspective, is sannyas. It's not going away to the forest. It's not wandering from ashram to ashram with the begging bowl, etc. Sannyas, and Krishna's using that explicit word, sannyasena, means staying in society, performing your duty for the well-being of the world, but without any selfish desire, without greed. That's the Gita's definition of sannyas, and that's interesting. I think a different take on what sannyas means. Sannyasena digacchati. So asakta buddhihi sarvatra jitatma vigata spriha Naishkarmya Siddhim Paramam Sanyasena Digacchati. Is that right? Sanyasena Digacchati. I think that's right. Let me just check my mind. Doubt arose in the mind. Sorry. I'm just looking through Shankaracharya's version, and he's got massive commentaries on these verses, so it's difficult to find the exact one. Gosh. Yes, Sanyasena Digacchati. And after all that, I was right already what I just said. Anyway, life's like that, isn't it? Sannyasen Adigacchati, Naishkarmya Siddhim Paramam, the perfection of the highest form of Naishkarmya, being free of karma, Sannyasen. Through that mood of sannyas, Adigacchati, he achieves that. Now, next verse, which is verse 50, and time is progressing, Krishna now introduces the next subject, which will be Gyan, the achievement of higher knowledge. And here again, in this verse, we see how Karma Yoga, that has just been again recapitulated, represented, is directly leads in to the attainment of higher knowledge, realization of Brahman, as these verses state, through the Karma Yoga. Okay, so Krishna says, Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame. And you can tell that Krishna's introducing a new topic because he says Nibodhame. Nibodha means learn from me. It's the same word as Buddha, really, enlightened. Understand from me, Nibodhame. So now he's introducing a new topic, and that new topic is Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame. Siddhim prapto yata brahma. How one who is siddhim prapta, one who has attained that state of Naishkarmya Siddhi. So you reach that point through Karma Yoga of transcending karma. How tatapnoti, how you achieve Brahman. Siddhim prapto yata brahma tatapnoti nibodhame. So now Krishna is saying, now learn from me how the person who has achieved success in transcending karma can reach Brahman. And I think what we're seeing here is the idea of two phases, if you like, of the spiritual endeavor. This Naishkarmya Siddhi is the way that one detaches oneself from the clutches of this world, raises oneself above the world. But that's not the end of it, because once you've broken free of attachment and entanglement in this world, then that establishes the platform to pursue, if you like, the goal of the other dimension of reality, which is Brahman, the spiritual dimension of reality. So Siddhim Prapto, having reached that stage of breaking free of the world, Siddhim Prapto, Yata Brahma Tatapnoti Nibodhame, how one then apnoti, achieves, reaches Brahman. Now, Brahman, of course, will be interpreted in different ways by different commentators, depending upon whether they're Advaitins or dualists, Vaishnavas, etc. But I think just generally we can understand it, how one attains or reaches the spiritual state of being. I think that it's non-specific enough for us to say that, and of course dependent upon your own philosophical sampradaya, doctrinal persuasion. It's open to be interpreted in whatever way seems most appropriate to you. So Siddhim Prapto Yata Brahma Tatapnoti, how one who has reached that state of Siddhi then reaches the spiritual state of being. Brahma apnoti nibodhame. Learn about that. Samasena Kaunteya. Just in brief, Samasena. I'm not going to launch into a whole Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, thick book. In fact, he's only going to give 3 verses, how you do it. The next 3 verses, which all run together. Samasena Kaunteya. Nishta Jnanasya Yapara. And this is the supreme nishta of Gyan. This is the supreme, the fulfillment of all knowledge. And knowledge, of course, comes in many different forms. But the nishta paragyanasya, the highest result, the highest position of knowledge, is that by which one attains Brahman. That form of the highest knowledge which transports one beyond, from that position of Naishkarmya Siddhi into the spiritual domain. How do we do this? Yes, we've broken free from the shackles of karmic action. We've attained that Naishkarmya state. But now then, how do we go on to the next stage, which is Nishta Jnanasya Para, which is the highest position of knowledge, and reach Brahman, Brahma apnoti. And then Krishna now gives 3 verses, which will be 51, 52 and 53. And he is here giving, as he says, Samasenena, only briefly, the means by which one moves on from that high state achieved by Karma Yoga to Brahma Bhutaha, as he'll say later, existing in the spiritual domain, making one's whole existence Brahman, spiritual. So we can go through these 3 verses because they all run together. Effectively, their 3 verses are one, as we'll see from the structure. So it's really a list of the process of by which one moves into that spiritual form of existence, Brahma Bhutaha. So first one is Buddhya Vishuddhya Yukto. Buddhi, again, with the Buddhi Vishuddhya, with the purified Buddhi, and that must refer back to the previous verse, which was Asakta Buddhi, the Buddhi, the state of mind, consciousness, thinking, etc., intellect, by which is entirely unattached. And that is Buddhi Vishuddhi, that is the purified Buddhi. It's purified of selfish desire, purified of greed, purified of hatred, anger, and malice. That's what karma yoga does for you. It purges away all this kalmasha, all this dirt in the buddhi, in the mind. So then, buddhya vishuddhya yukto, engaging. And it's not exactly clear what this means, because yukta, it can mean joined with, joining with, but I think it really means engaging, using, and I think it applies probably to yoga, because the word yoga and the word yukta come from the same verbal root. So I think what it means really is, yukta here means engaging the purified buddhi in the practice of yoga. That's maybe an overinterpretation, but otherwise it's be conjoining or linking up with the purified buddhi, but you're already linked up with it. So I think it does mean that, engaging the purified buddhi, engaging in yoga with the purified buddhi. I think that's what it means there, although other interpretations and readings are certainly possible. Buddhya vishuddhya yukto drityatmanam niyamya cha. Niyamya, bringing under control, regulating. What are you regulating? Atmanam, the self, getting control of yourself, not allowing your passions and emotions and your desires, your hankerings, etc., your passions to push you around. Atmanam niyamya, being completely in control of yourself, doing what you know through your thinking mind, through your Vishuddhi Buddhi, if you have Vishuddha Buddhi, know is the best thing to do. Yes. And how do you do that? Dritya. Driti, we've had it before earlier in the chapter. It means resolution, commitment, determination. So controlling yourself with resolution, being determined. I will not allow my laziness to distract me from doing things. I will not allow my passions to push me around. I am determined. I am committed to achieving this goal. Dritya. Drityatmanam niyamya cha. Shabdadin vishyan chaktva. Is that right? Shabdadin vishyan chaktva. Yes, giving up. Tyaktva, taj. What are you giving up? The vishayas, the objects of sensory, sensual pleasure, such as sound, the pleasure of the ears, but also because shabdadin, shabda, sound, and all the others, the pleasing sights, the pleasing tastes, unfortunately, the pleasing aromas even, and the pleasing sensations of touch, renouncing those, giving up worldly preoccupations, shabdadin, vishayan, chaktva, and raga, dvesha, vyudasya, going beyond. Raga and dvesha, they are opposites. Raga is a passionate hankering for this. I must have it, I must have it. Dvesha is aversion, dislike, it's revolting. And instead, raga, dvesha, vyudasya means going beyond that to that state of equanimity, serenity, transcending those dualities of longing for all things that delight us, loathing for all things that we don't like. That serene state of mind that Krishna's talked about so often, prasada, chitta prasada, that's Yoga Sutras actually, but it's the same idea, being equipoised in situations, no longing, intense hankerings, no intense loathings. Raga dvesha vyudasya cha. More than in verse 52, isn't it? What else should you do if you're seeking out the highest result of knowledge, apnoti Brahman, seeking out spiritual awakening, vivikta sevi, vivikta, a lonely, finding lonely places, quiet places for contemplation and meditation. Very difficult in this world. Quite easy when I was on my holidays. I was kind of very much enjoyed Vivicta Sevi. I found a nice little natural seat in the rocks overlooking the sea, and could sit there for a few hours, just watching the sea, thinking, etc. Vivicta Sevi, allowing oneself that time for contemplation, reflection, meditation as well. I don't think Krishna means here that you have to separate yourself from the world, because that he's already said that one should engage with the world, but finding sometimes to contemplate, to be within yourself rather than constantly being engaged with the external world. Vivicta Sevi, Lagu Ashi, Lagvashi. Ashi means eating, Lagu means light. So not stuffing yourself with sumptuous foods, etc. Again, we'll remember from chapter 17, the Gita really is opposed to harsh austerities. It says that these are tamasic, that mortification of the body through really severe fasts. But what it really means is not overly indulging in big meals, etc., being moderate, restrained in one's eating, not being preoccupied with food and drink and things like that, focusing elsewhere. Vivicta Sevi, finding time to be alone. Lagvashi, being restrained in your eating. Yatavakaya manasaha. Yata means, again, it's control, like niyata in the last one, controlling, regulating. What are you regulating? Yatavak, vak is your speech, your words. Kaya, your body. Manasaha, your mind. Again, it's being self-mastery, but that self-mastery applied particularly to the words you speak. Isn't it the case? So often we're bursting with jibber jabber, always going to gossip, and before we know what we've done, we've said something stupid or inappropriate or hurtful to somebody else. Be in control, and it's usually driven by the passions, isn't it? The emotions. But no, yatavak, control your speech. Kaya, control the actions of your body as well. Don't let the body free rein to do whatever it likes. And then manasaha, your thoughts as well. Don't let your mind dwell on irritations or enmities or imagined faults and things like that. See them things for what they are. They're just petty matters. So yatava kaya manasaha. Now then, and I'm aware of the time, dhyana yoga paronityam. Dhyana yoga, probably many of you will recognize this. This is the yoga of meditation, paro, being committed constantly to the practice of dhyana yoga, of meditational yoga. So this is, again, and here of course we might think of the Yoga Sutras, we might think of the teachings that were given in chapter 6 of the Gita, in which Krishna talked about realization of the spiritual identity of the Atman through fixed concentration within. That's what dhyana means. And of course the Yoga Sutras gives more extensive discussion of how that is to be undertaken, but it really means suspending outward perceptions and turning the whole of one's concentration inwards. Why? Because this is Nishtha Jnanasya Param, the highest state of knowledge, and that knowledge comes from within oneself, not from hearing, even hearing Gita, Upanishads, etc. That's not the highest knowledge, because it's still theoretical knowledge. The highest knowledge, the Nishtha Jnanasya Param, is from within, and that comes from dhyana yoga. Therefore Krishna says dhyana yoga param nityam, dhyana yoga param nityam, dhyana yoga paro nityam, and vairagyam samupashritaha. Again, vairagya is very much the same as being free of raga, withdrawing from this world, because focusing on the spiritual goal that one is aiming to achieve. And that means becoming somewhat disinterested from the materialistic aspirations that were perhaps drummed into us in our childhood. I know it was with me at school. They were telling me about the successful life that I would lead if only I would work a little bit harder at school and pass more of my Latin tests. Then I would achieve fantastic material success. But Vairagya means giving up that worldliness, withdrawing from that passion and focusing on the higher goal, which is what Krishna's talking about here, transcending the preoccupations of this world and looking for the spiritual goals that are offering. Vairagyam samupashritam. Now I'm aware we're out of time, but if we can finish this verse 53, that's a good place to stop, because it's at that point that Krishna's given his 3 verses on how one reaches Brahman, and this is it. Vairagyam samupashritam. Oh, in this verse, next verse, he gives a list of things that must be given up. In the start of the second line, it's vimuccha, these things which are to be set aside. And what are they? Ahankaram, balam, darpam, kamam, krodam, parigraham. I think that's 6 things Krishna lists that the one aspiring to transcend the world and reach Brahman must give up. Ahankara, egotism, egocentricity, it really means being overly focused on oneself and one's own interests, one's own preoccupations, without considering the bigger picture. Balam is strength, physicality, bodybuilding, etc., weights, running, etc. Not being overly concerned with bodily success, perhaps, because this is a spiritual endeavor which goes beyond the body. So this is one of the things to be given up. Bodily preoccupation, etc. Ahankaram, balam, darpam is pride, arrogance, even arrogance in one's spiritual attainment, even arrogance over one's knowledge of Gita, for example. You can take pride in those things. Again, it's degrading. It's antithetical to the spiritual endeavor, that darpa, that pride. Humility, recognizing things and yourself for what you are. Somebody extremely special, but at the same time, no more special than anybody else. Ahankaram, egotism, egocentricity. Balam, preoccupation with physical strength. Darpam, pride in oneself, thinking of oneself, self-eulogy, thinking how wonderful I am all the time. I'm a great spiritual leader, even. I'm a great guru. My disciples worship and adore me. Everybody hangs on my word. And then suddenly, from being well versed in Gita, you're back like snakes and ladders, isn't it? Back down to the beginning again. Darpa. It's a very insidious fault that gets to us. Ahankaram, balam, darpam, and then kamam, which is lust, desire for sensory pleasures. Krodha is anger, rage, irritation. Nothing worth getting angry about. It's a negative emotion. It's just it's falling prey to our passions. And parigraha, the verb to grasp, wanting to acquire things, even if it's just how many more things can I get? This sort of state of it's like Krishna was mentioning, wasn't he, before in chapter 16, idamodya maya labdam. All this is I have attained. Imam prapshe manoratam, and my schemes will bring me more. That mentality of self-aggrandizement. How many donations have I brought in, etc.? How much money have I got? How big is my bank? Those sort of things. Parigraha, grasping for more and more and more. It's an addiction, isn't it? We see so many wealthy people, very, very wealthy, but still they're so addicted. Parigraha, grasping all the time. It's a very evocative word, isn't it? Parigraha, grabbing this, grabbing some more of that, grabbing some more of that. Parigraham, vimuccha, all those 6 things you give up. Ahankara, egotism. balam, preoccupation with physical strength, darpam, pride, arrogance, self-importance, balam darpam, kamam, intense desire, krodha, anger, parigraha, grasping, always wanting more and more property, possessions and wealth. Gita is assertively and resolutely anti-materialistic, isn't it? It's got no time for materialism because it's the antithesis of spirituality. Gita is pushing us in the direction of spiritual awakening, and in doing so, inevitably, it's pushing us away from materialism and longing, hankering, all the things that we are taught from school and by the culture of our society. Enjoy this, get this. All the time we've been bombarded with the idea, parigraha, 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 grasp more and more. Vimucha, Krishna says, giving all those things up. Nirmamaha, shanto, nothing is, not that sense of ownership. This is mine. I've got this. Nirmama. Mama is, means my. No sense of mine. Not being possessive about things, etc. Hard not to be, isn't it? It's like oftentimes I lent books out and I've got things, I'll never say that again, will I? And then that's my book. Nirmamaha, Krishna says. Give it anyway. There's something that's mentioned in Mahabharata a few times. It's about King Janaka, who may or may not have been the Janaka who was Sita's father. But it says when the city of Mithila, apparently in ancient times, the city of Mithila suffered from a fire. And it says there's a quotation I've seen from Janaka. He said, I have lost nothing in this fire because nothing was truly mine. That's what he said. And I suppose that epitomizes what is being said here. Nirmamaha and shanta, tranquil, at peace. So therefore, when you've got that, vimucha nirmamaha shanto brahma bhuhyaya kalpate. At that point, and that's the end of these three verses, which are 51, 52, 53, Brahma Bhujaya Kalpate. Then one reaches, then one attains the Brahma Bhuya, the spiritual existence. So that is, as Krishna said, samasena. It's only briefly he's given it, but he's defined the path which goes from Karma Yoga, the Naishkarmya Siddhi, that is the achievement of Karma Yoga, into Brahma Bhuya, entering into the domain of the spirit. You can see the transition that's taking place. And next week, if you still want to listen, it goes forward again to draw in bhakti. I know I've overrun time. Sorry about that. But if we look through again, what is the path? Buddhya Vishuddhya Yukto, Dritya Manam Niyamya, controlling oneself with driti, with determined, Dritya Manam Niyamya, Shabdadin Vishayang Chakva, giving up, renouncing the enjoyable things experienced through the senses. Shabdadin Vishayang Chakra, Raga Dvesha Vyadasyatya, being free of raga, desire, and hatred and aversion. Raga Dvesha Vyadasyatya. Vivikta Sevi, finding time to be alone, contemplative. Ladvashi, not overindulgence in lavish foods. Ladvashi. Yatavat Kaya Manasaha, being in control of your speech, your body, activities, and even your thoughts. Yatavat Kaya Manasaha. Dhyana Yoga Paro Nityam, constantly trying to practice the Dhyana Yoga. Dhyana Yoga Paronityam, Vairagyam Samopashita, and moving towards that state of renunciation, freedom from attachment and hankering for this world, then being free of or giving up egotism, egocentricity, ahankaram, balam, physical strength, darpam, pride, kamam, lust, desire, krodham, anger, parigraham, grasping, nirmamaha, renouncing that sense of selfish possessiveness, Nimamaha, Shanto, and above all being at peace with the world, being at peace with your mind, then Brahmabhuchaya Kalpate. And that's the final statement. You see how those three verses all fit together. I'm sorry I've gone on too long, and well, I haven't been here for the last 2 weeks, so 10 minutes extra isn't too much, is it? But we've got to that point now. It's a good point to stop. Krishna's now reached through the second stage of his recapitulation. He's done karma yoga. Now he's done jnana, achieved mainly through meditation, and now in the next verse, he'll summarize that, and then he'll introduce in verse 54 bhakti, his third big theme. But anyway, we'll stop there, obviously. Thanks for listening in again and coming back after the weeks off, and also for sticking with it after all these weeks. We are actually getting quite close now to the end of the Gita, so in just a few more weeks we'll be finished. But anyway, thanks for listening, and good night. Namaste.